Ladies and gentlemen, possessing for more than 8 years the chairmanship of IRAPA's Raw Material Committee, this is my last contribution as a member of the panel from this post. I was always and I'm still guided from two main thoughts. First, we are, all of us in IRAPAS, raw material suppliers, producers and traders sitting in the same boat and facing together the weather changes in the steel market. I think that we have done this successfully for all these years. And second, nobody can impose his decisions to the market. What we have to do is to try to understand the tendencies and to be prepared to face the evolutions and to overcome the difficulties. 8 years ago, the raw material suppliers committee was held in a small room with less than 10 participants. In this IRAPAS meeting in Berlin, we enjoyed the participation of about 50 participants coming from 25 important companies from the most different places of the world. I think that this is the best timing to pass the chairmanship to Mr. Jens Björkman. Jens, are you here? So, Mr. Jens Björkman, a young man, as you can see, representing Stena from Sweden, who was elected unanimously from the board of IRAPAS and our committee. I wish him, and I'm sure that he will respond successfully to his duties. I would like to thank our President Marty, as well as our previous President for many years, Ugur Darbeler, for their help and cooperation, and especially I would like to thank all the members of the Raw Materials Committee for their confidence all these years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jens. So, Mr. Boyce, shall we continue with the Traders Committee?
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We had a very productive meeting yesterday in Traders Committee. We covered various issues from political instability in the world to the raw material pricing and the low profitability of the traders in the steel business. Let me just summarize some of the findings that we had. The general consensus about the political instability, we looked at the two different areas, one which is the Middle East, particularly Iraq and Syria, the second being the Russia and Ukraine. We did expect to hear more about the interruptions, but from what we understand, the business to Iraq still continues with a lot of interruptions. But to Syria was not existent before, so it's an older story, so there is not a whole lot going on in that area as well. For the one good news that we have discussed was the Iran, and I understand that there is new possibilities for buying and selling to Iran, so that's a new market maybe for us to look forward in going forward. For the region of Ukraine and Russia, we've been told that the business is going as usual, minor interruptions, but most of the traders think that the trade flows just as the old days, so the interruptions really is not a major problem for them. On the subject of the raw materials pricing, iron ore prices have been declining, and it was the general idea that the prices for iron ore will probably continue to decline, which will force the scrap prices to decline as well. So the traders in general are looking for lower prices going forward in the raw materials market. We did have discussions on the trade cases, and on the rebar front, Turkey being absent from the anti-dumping findings, the general idea was that the trade to U.S. will continue and the pricing may not change. And but on the wire rod case, China exiting the market the general expectation is there will be other countries will enter to the U.S. market. As for the profitability issue, most traders, to my surprise, are content with status quo. So to increase their profitability, they're looking at other ways, including cost-cutting measures, and there is really no new idea that's coming in, and I think that low pricing and low profitability or low margins will continue going forward. We had further discussions on China, on trade cases with China, China's expansion, but I noticed that we will have further discussions on it today, so I will leave those subjects to be discussed later on. And that really summarizes our discussions yesterday. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Producers Committee. Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. And for the first thing, I want to say also thank you to Janice for your contribution. It's been a pleasure working with you all this time. And as Murata said, we started yesterday, a new format. We put together billets and rewards because we thought that the further discussion would be better and more intense, and it was. I really have to thank you all participants. We had participants from, I'll just make a quick reading of the countries were present: Brazil, Turkey, Qatar, South Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Emirates, Kuwait, Spain, Italy, Greece, Nigeria, Russia, Ukraine, Moldova, and Philippines new in this meeting. So obviously for us it was good, and we're happy to welcome them into the group. So I want to thank you all the guys for all the contribution on the discussions. And okay, now going to business. We started with billets, and I will try to summarize. I got here a lot of information, but I will try to summarize the main major points. For instance, billets from the area there's a reality that some plants there are stopped, so it's true that there's some disruption in the business, and supply is in a sense being shortened a little bit. So with that's one point. And then the second point is that Turkey is totally out of the market in terms of selling goods. So it appears that in that area everything has been left or to a newcomer, that is the Chinese mills. And so the Chinese supply of billets is gaining ground in the area, and that obviously is going to put pressure on billet price in the Mediterranean, in the area, Black Sea, and we believe that that's going to put price on the scrap price as well, because in a sense billets are substituting is in substitution of the scrap. So we believe that's going to put pressure on the scrap price. In that sense also, we understand that even with the overcapacity, China is still increasing production, so we will see a bit more of that even in the market. And the conclusion of all that, and that was also on the side of billets, but also we will see on the side of rebar, is that, and as you mentioned here by my colleagues, is that we are coming to a new setup. Obviously, with the difference in raw material, in terms of iron ore, scrap price, the pressure in a good number of markets in terms of price of final product, billet price, will take us to a new setup that is going to come in the next month. Because obviously, as Tony said, the market on that sense is quick, and the market adjusts quick to the new reality. So probably when we meet in Paris, we were talking different figures for everything, for scrap price, billet price, river price, for everything. But okay, we got 6 months to enjoy the ride. One mention also to something that is a little disturbing is that in terms of export from China, we very often see what's set in a very simple way, kind of fraud, because billets are shipped with papers of square bars, or are shipped as alloyed steel. Rebars are shipped. To talk about rivers now, as we are touching the point. Rivers are shipped as well with a little bit of adding of boron as alloy bars. So in that sense, well, we understand that the markets shouldn't be or they shouldn't so easily accept all these kind of games in the market. But okay, this is a reality, and obviously we have to live with it. Okay, so we started then discussing rebars, and as usual there we tried to have a picture on different markets, different areas, what was going on in terms of economic variables and in terms of market variables. So and this time we started by Turkey, just to change a little bit the order, and our colleagues from Turkey were mentioning that the economy in Turkey appears to be all right, okay. The GDP expected for this year is 2.1%. All the variables or macro figures for economy are looking reasonable, all right. Apparently, in terms of demand for rebars, is staying at similar numbers. It's going to stay at similar numbers and maybe a slight increase compared with last year. So in that sense, the Turkish producers are reasonably happy with the domestic market. One also thing that they mentioned, and now moving into export markets, which that something that for Turkish mills is obviously a big part of the business. They said that in Iraq, apparently channels are starting to be open again. So there are shipments into Iraq that are starting again, which obviously is a good release for the Turkish mills. In terms of Emirates, very challenging because of the presence of Chinese rebars is starting to be there, although with a lot of, because majority of markets there, they got homologations, they got barriers, so with really coming into at a very slow pace with all the difficulties in terms of technical difficulties, but they are there. Lebanon, it was mentioned, Lebanon, Libya, Egypt, they're all now threatened or, well, supplied or offered in terms of Chinese rebars. The offers are there. So that for the Turkish mills is challenging. On the other hand, the market, as has been mentioned, the market in the US has been back to normal for them, so they expect that to be a good ground in terms of doing business. Caribbean, Panama especially has been challenged. There's the Chinese mills, the Chinese supply is gaining ground there. So as a summary, export situation, export markets for our Turkish colleagues are challenging, and the way they're going to adapt to that, obviously every company is going to decide which way adapts. Obviously they're trying to be competitive in terms of cost cutting and all these kind of exercises, but also some of them, they are accepting and they are working on evaluating production cuts. So both options are on the table, and every company is working on what is best for every one of them. Again, Turkish, the sentence has been repeated these days is that the market has to come to a new setup. I mean, the point where we are now is very unbalanced, so we need to come to a new setup. We move to our colleagues from the Gulf area very active today, very participant. Really, I enjoyed the discussion. We all, I think, enjoyed the discussion. And also giving a lot of good news in terms of economic news. I mean, obviously they still are enjoying and obviously making the most and using efficiently all the money that they make on selling oil. And in terms of figures, Qatar is going to grow 7% in terms of economy, and the rebar consumption is going to grow 10% with a different number of projects in terms of construction, transportation, preparation of the soccer World Cup. So that's the activity there is good. Obviously, there Chinese offers cannot penetrate at this point in time, but they're very keeping an eye on that. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia also having a good performance in economy, 4.5% to 5%, which in a big country as Saudi Arabia is remarkable. Is showing very good handling and driving of the economy by the government there. The comment was we were a little bit slow in terms of rebar consumption in summer because of hot weather and vacation, Ramadan altogether, but now they are back to normal, so they expect a market of almost 9 million tons in 2014, which is, they're happy with that. And in terms of Chinese penetration in the market, that has been basically in wire rod. Wire rod has been offered and has been bought, and is starting to come into the market. Okay, we move to Kuwait. Kuwait was said very similar to Saudi Arabia. They had a slow summer, but then it's recovering. GDP expected 5.5%, and consumption 900,000 tons. Good projects, housing, infrastructure, expecting, in terms of consumption, expecting 1.2 million tons in 2015. Emirates, good in terms of Dubai consumption. In Dubai today is 2.3 million tons a year, which is really coming up nicely from the bottom and getting up to the pre-crisis levels. So in general, the Gulf area showing good prospects and good behavior in terms of market. We then listen to our colleague from Gerdau, Brazil. Well, South America is one of the areas in the world that in terms of economy is deteriorating a little bit, probably because of the price of raw materials. All the economies, or many economies there, they are based on iron ore price, copper price, so it's deteriorating a little bit. In Brazil, they are expecting this year a GDP of 0.9%, and they are not very optimistic in terms of 2015, with the new government coming in and a little bit of difficult period in terms of politics, so they are not very confident. In fact, they say that the consumption of rebars in quarter 3 was down. Real shipments from the mills were down. I mentioned that in South America, the country that is performing better is Peru. It's a small country, but it's growing 7%, and maybe also, I would add, maybe also Colombia is a spot where this is still looking bright. So that's for South America. We went then to Europe, a lot of crying there, especially in the south. But in terms of Northern Europe, construction is still okay. In Germany is okay. Northern Europe is okay, and we see rebar business going well. Poland is doing well. And then in the south, our Italian colleagues were giving us a picture of what's going on there, and the picture is not bright. There's a capacity of 7 million tons in Italy, and the consumption now is 1.5 million, so this is not easy to manage. they're trying to do with production cuts, exports to North Africa, but they're really having put it this way, challenging times. We discussed Greece. So in Italy, they expect this year negative GDP. Greece is improving. The GDP now is 0%, but they're coming from a huge recession, so that's good news. In terms of rebar consumption, from 350,000 tons last year to 400,000 tons this year. So it's getting better, although the bad news is that the mills there, they are still at utilization levels of 35%, 40%. So they still have a long way to go back to normal. They're exporting 300,000 tons, so they produce a total of 700,000 tons. In Spain, we are looking better in terms of economy. Our growth this year predicted is 1.5%, so it's strong. Our unemployment, even being very high, is going down. And we expect, because the companies there have done a lot of, not only in steel, but in all areas, have done a lot of big homework in terms of cost cutting and efficiency. So we expect that our economy will really keep performing well and will help us. In terms of construction market, we are still, we stopped going down last year, and we are now on the bottom and predicting to starting to recover next year in terms of construction business. So that will mean that then this year we'll see a little increase in terms of consumption from 800,000 to 850, and that will continue in 2015. So that was for Europe, and almost finishing. Then we talked about the representative from Moldova still were talking about the activity levels. That was 50%. Everyone is working at 50% and basically exporting into the neighbor areas. And just to finish, we discussed with our colleagues, newcomers of Philippines, and apparently the business there is going very well. The prospects are good. Economy is one of the fast-growing economies in Asian area. And they're expecting consumption now is about 2 million. They expect the consumption to go up to 3 million soon, in the next couple of years, and all that is supplied by local milk. So that was it. Thank you for attention. It was long, but thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for these informative summaries from your discussions in your respective committees. Let me try to recap what I have heard from you. And looking at my notes here, obviously the raw materials market situation is very much unbalanced, right? Taking into consideration the iron ore and the scrap prices and the respective costs. The increasing exports from China influencing the market and changing the balances in the markets. The raw material demand, particularly in Arab Peninsula, the GCC market is also having additional impact on this change in the balance of the market. The scrap prices, the demand for scrap in growing markets, in developed markets, in those domestic markets of those developing countries, I should say, are also putting a lot of pressure on scrap prices. Most of the yards, I understood, are empty at this point. Also, increasing value of the US dollar is putting additional pressure on the international scrap prices, upwards pressure, I noted. And taking into consideration all these developments in the market, the Raw Materials Committee concluded that scrap flow may change drastically in the future. On the traders side, I understood all traders are suffering from low profitability, and the situation is expected to continue going forward, unfortunately. But it was good to hear that business to Iraq still continues, even though there are a lot of interruptions. Also, great to hear there are possibilities of buying and selling exists and emerged and exist in Iranian market. Businesses, despite minor interruptions, businesses as usual on the Black Sea side, Russian market and so on. But the raw material pricing constitutes a certain problem in the market. Traders also confirmed, following the decline in iron ore prices, which should force scrap price down, and even though that has not happened yet. And traders are looking forward to seeing lower raw material prices in the market. Following the final determination by the US DOC on the anti-dumping case on rebar imports from Mexico and Turkey, traders and the exemption of Turkish rebars from any possible anti-dumping duties, traders confirm that business from Turkey goes on as usual, and I understand the volume of the business should increase, but the by road business from China to US is literally dead, following the determinations on the anti-dumping margins on Chinese wire rod exports. Going into the Producers Committee, the billet market is, of course, we all know, is under pressure. There are many plants had to stop in Ukraine. There are several interruptions to the business. Turkey is totally out of the billets market because of raw material pricing and the availability of lower priced raw materials to produce semi-finished goods, competitive, I should say. And the newcomer China is taking over the market and putting a lot of pressure on prices in the Mediterranean and Black Sea area. Billet is during these months and in the coming months, billet has emerged as substitute of scrap and is also putting pressure on scrap prices. The Producers Committee concluded that there is a new setup. There should be a new setup in the market, which is expected to emerge during the course of next month or two. We don't expect market to adjust itself, and producers expect market will adjust itself very quickly. Obviously, there are complaints that China is shipping billets as alloyed square bars, wire rods as alloyed material, and rebars as reinforcing bars as alloyed bars. Even though the producers say, even though the market should not accept such practices, we have to face that this is the reality in the market as of today. Going into markets one by one. The economy is, I understand, doing okay in Turkey. Domestic demand for rebars is similar to last year, and the slight growth is expected from last year. It's also, producers also confirmed that the business in Iraq has started to open again, even though there are some interruptions. In other export markets for Turkish mills, the Chinese rebars is Chinese rebars is taking a certain market share in the Emirates market and putting pressure on the prices. Chinese offers also started to be seen in Lebanese and Egyptian markets and challenging Turkish mills in the mentioned markets. U.S. market is obviously good for Turkish mills as a primary export market following the final determination on the anti-dumping case. But overall, the export markets are very much challenging for Turkish mills and under these unbalanced market circumstances, and as confirmed before, a new setup is definitely required. On the Gulf area, Qatar, economy in Qatar is obviously doing very well. Rebar consumption is expected to grow 10% this year. A lot of projects, including the FIFA 2022 World Cup, is there, increasing the demand for steel. In Saudi Arabian market, the economy is doing very well. Chinese penetration is seen in wire rods so far. In Kuwait, the market is recovering after a slow summer. Total consumption is about 900,000 tons, and good projects are also there to help us expect further increase in consumption. In UAE, the consumption is increasing steadily, approaching back to pre-crisis levels. In general, Gulf market is performing very well, and further good prospects are there. In South America, many economies are suffering because of the raw material pricing changes. In Brazil, the GDP growth is expected to be around 0.9% this year, but unfortunately, consumption of rebars were down in the third quarter of the year. Peru has been performing better. Peruvian market and Colombian market is also looking good for business. Moving into Europe, I understood Northern European market is doing very well in terms of construction and economically, but unfortunately, Southern Europe, we cannot say the same for Southern Europe. There are even though there has been significant production cuts and exports to North Africa, the times are still challenging in Italian market. Negative GDP growth is expected this year. Greece is coming out of a huge recession, and a slight increase in consumption of rebars is expected this year. Spain, in terms of economy, Spanish market is looking better. Construction demand for construction is expected to recover next year after a certain slight increase this year. And finally, we have heard about the Philippines market, where consumption is expected to grow by 50% from 2 million to 3 million tons, 2 million tons to 3 million tons in a couple of years' time. So, I'd like to, once again, I'd like to thank the chairman of the committees, ERAPAS committees, and before moving on to the questions that we have gathered, I'd like to ask if there are any questions from the floor at this time. At this point, I guess so. Would you allow me to move on to... Sorry?
Let's open the discussion. There will be.
Sure. Okay. Please, by the way, I will start with the questions we have gathered, but please stop me whenever you want to ask any questions. Okay, so this first one is for the Raw Material Suppliers Committee, Yanis. Recently, commodities market has seen sharp declines. For instance, iron ore and rebar futures have fallen by its limit of 4% in a single trading day, late in September in the Chinese futures market. Meanwhile, imported iron ore price first declined below $80 per ton in late September this year. What do you think about iron ore price trend in the international market for the rest of the current year and the coming year? What price range do you think iron ore prices will be in, below $80 for a long time or move up to $90 or more? No need to say this question comes from our Chinese colleagues.
So I wish I could say that iron ore price is moving to $90 because it is affecting directly the scrap price. Traditionally, in a ratio between 2.5 and 3 times scrap price in comparison with the iron ore price, and now we are over 4 times. So it's a pressure for the scrap prices. But if, as I heard these days and this morning, 65 million tons of iron ore, they are expecting their buyers, and maybe another 100 coming next 2 years, I cannot seriously pretend that the price is going up. So we have to take our measures, all of us.
I don't know why you guys are looking at it as a negative thing. It's a positive thing. I think everybody should be very happy, at least in this group, that the iron ore prices are going down. Because if you think about it, the iron ore prices was artificially taken up. Iron ore is controlled by 3 to 4 producers, and they gather and they push the prices up. So we end up paying more for our steel, and actually our margins went down. When those guys were making 30, 40, 50% on their money, we stopped making 1 to 2% on our money. So it's a good thing. It really is healthy for all of us as producers, as traders. Given it will put pressure on the scrap prices, which will probably bother you, but at the end of the day, it's all margins, and scrap has a way to go down as well. I mean, scrap prices right now is considerably higher than the rest of the market. So we have room to go down. I understand totally that there's a certain minimum cost for iron ore or scrap, and in fact the base for scrap is a little bit higher because you still have to pay for gathering, you still have to pay for production, and you still have to pay for shipping. So there's a certain minimum and there. And taxes, exactly. But there's a certain minimum there, and it's all right. I mean, I think if it goes down, maybe you'll just pay for the gatherers a little bit less, and it's still going to work. So what I would like to see is the mills taking advantage of this and make better margins, and leave us traders to make better margins as well.
The problem is if we will be able to find scrap less than $300 or $320. This is the problem, to supply. Will we succeed? I'm with you. But
remember, we were doing $125 scrap.
Yes, but it was not such a domestic competition.
Right.
Now the steel mills in Russia are doubled from the moment that we're talking these prices. Not only in Russia.
I think markets always adjust. And there's at least for iron ore, there's room to really go down. Not that it will go down, because I'm very surprised when you have 3, 4, 5 cartel just controlling the whole iron ore in the world. I'm very surprised that it's going down. I think it should be investigated what's going on, because really when you have such low numbers of producers in the whole wide world, so you would wonder why they can't control the price, but apparently they can't. So it's a healthy thing for us. I think we should be happy.
There's obviously a very, very big imbalance in the market right now, major unbalanced situation, and let's see how the market will adjust itself. Any comments from the floor on iron ore pricing expectations? Any different comments? Possibly not. All right, so shall I move to the next question? It is actually more or less on the same subject. Let me read it first. The typical ratio of 3-to-1 between scrap and iron ore prices seems to have expanded to around 4.3-to-1 in 2014. Also, the market expectation is iron ore prices may see $75 per ton in 2015 and even $70 per ton in future. How do you think such development affects global steel markets? What kind of measures can EAF-based producers take in order to survive in current market situation?
I'm going to say the same thing. There is no such thing in free markets that it should be 3-to-4. There is no such thing, okay? These things are all artificial. Today it could be 4, it could be 5, it doesn't matter. So I think that you may have, obviously, a lower price of iron ore that's going to support certain mills. What's going to happen is, if iron ore keeps going downward and stays at a lower level compared to scrap, then you will see the mills producing with iron ore will have a serious advantage over the scrap producers. So that may be the only change in it.
I think in terms of producers, it's obvious that at this point in time we have learned on the past 7 years that we only have to sell the tons where we make profit. So the disaster will come in terms of EAF people, just if the scrap, obviously the reference will be the scrap price. If we can produce the last ton, we'll produce it. If not, we won't produce it, and probably that will, at a point, will force, or even maybe as Turkish colleagues are doing, just looking for substitutes, cheap billets, something. But it's a point where obviously we're not going to produce the ton that we lose money on it.
That's That's a very good attitude. That's wonderful.
Yeah, we've learned that in 7 years, and we are doing that.
Exactly. There's a gentleman over there.
Do you guys think that part of the iron ore...
Microphone is there, James. I know you don't need microphone, but
He's got a good voice. So.
Yeah. Do you guys think that part of the rapid decline recently in iron ore prices has to do with the Chinese rehypothecating all these trade finance piles of warehouses that really don't have the iron ore in it, but it's maybe been sold 2 or 3 times or used as finance for other ventures? Because what I've read is a lot of the commodities in China, a lot of these warehouses really don't have as much copper, iron ore that they say, but it's been used fraudulently, like in gamesmanship with warehouse receipts or whatever, to the tune of about $10 billion. But I think that finding the right price has anything to do with that?
No, I think it's genuine, and obviously if you talk to any economist in the world, it's genuine to say that in general, and you can name 1, 2, 3 or whatever, yeah? But in general, raw material commodities were in a bubble. I mean, this is the general concept. So I think that, obviously we are discussing the case of iron ore, but although we can say the same thing about raw materials, commodities, there is a bubble. So it's just inflating the bubble. And that's what it is.
It has a lot to do with China, obviously, because it's the largest user of iron ore. But I don't think it's because of the misrepresentation of their stocks. If that is the case, and we all know it's misrepresentation, that means that the iron ore stocks are lower, which means the iron ore price should be higher. So if it is the opposite effect, that scenario that you mentioned is really not the effect of it. It has something to do with the spot buying, and people are going to spot buying, and the spot buying, I guess, that could be something to do with it. But I guess we will find out more about it as we progress and see the future on it.
Just a response to the previous question. I'm from Argus. I was in, I cover iron ore.
Can you speak louder, please?
Sorry, I'm from Argus Media. I'm the iron ore editor, and I'm here covering scrap as well. So just a few misconceptions around the iron ore market. In response to the previous question, as I understand it, iron ore stocks at the ports have not been used for financing. There have been some cases with copper and some smaller metals, but it hasn't really been distorting the market. If you talk to some of the guys involved in financing, Credit Suisse or Citi, they'll tell you that's not true. In terms of the floor for the price, it's more of a statement than a question, sorry. You'll find that all the iron ore miners are losing money at current price levels, apart from the big three. Talking to domestic Chinese iron ore miners, their average cost of production is about $80, lowered from 100. So if prices remain at current levels, you'll see a lot of closures in the next 9 months to a year. So we can expect the iron ore price to stabilize over the next 18 months to 2 years. It will remain lower than we're used to, but people who are saying it's going down to 60 or 70 long term are being overly bearish. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Certainly, this is part of the balancing movements that we would expect in the market. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yes.
This is for the producers. Actually, we have already discussed, but let's one more discuss from billet market point of view. It seems the scrap to iron ore price ratio will not be back to its usual traditional level in near future. What's your expectation for billet market trend given the prevailing relatively higher cost of producing steel from scrap?
I think it's obviously the continuation of last question. We producers, we are not speculators. I mean, if we can produce something that we can make money, we do it. If not, we don't do it. So that will depend on the adjustment, as now has been said. At a point, iron ore price needs to approach maybe, or going back up a little bit. Scrap price maybe needs to approach to iron ore price, and they will have to find a point, and we will follow. And we are not. We will not speculate. I mean, if we will produce and we'll sell always the price at the price that we can make money, then we are not losing money. And I think that's the main point to understand. It's the market. You don't have to fear it. You just have to follow it. And we cannot advance to the market, especially in things like steel. You have to follow it, and you have to take it day by day. So when we see where everything is going, we will decide our price and pricing and level of production, and the market will be there.
Would you be considering buying billets from the blast furnaces and rolling it instead of producing from scrap?
If that's a way of obviously approaching the market, we will do it. But it's not. Okay, it's an option, but it's not a simple one. Right? I mean, sometimes it's easier to stop your mill for a while. It's because it's not a simple one. It can be done to a certain extent, because obviously you cannot be supplied all your grades from an external supplier. You cannot be supplied maybe your cross sections. So it's not a simple thing. I mean, logistics. I think that, for instance, in our group we are talking about 10 million tons steel production. So that's yeah. So we cannot expect on buying 10 million tons of billets in the market. Yeah, so it's all. But I said it's something that needs to be followed. I mean, we're all here working every day, and we love this job, so we have to follow every day what is going on. And it's difficult to speculate. I mean, to speculate on what is going to happen is difficult. We just have to see. Obviously, we will find a point, but we have to see what is the point.
Thank you. Michael must. Oh, excuse me, Michael.
Just
Michael Sutterdahl here. I think it's important that we don't get down on ourselves, so that electric arc furnace scrap-based production is a very effective and efficient method of production for domestic markets. And just as Kim mentioned now that it's sometimes better to turn off the furnace than to produce the extra ton at a loss. One of the things that is like I see as a long-term trend is that merchant billet exports produced from scrap is something that's going to decline more and more because of the oversupply situation on iron ore generally. And right now we're being affected heavily by the Chinese export of billets. But in the future it can be Brazilian blast furnace billets, it can be Russian blast furnace billets, Ukrainian blast furnace billets. And as long as the domestic markets like Russia, United States, European Union are strong, it makes sense still to produce rebars, wire rods, H-beams from scrap, because it's a very efficient and effective method of production. But there's going to be a large displacement of merchant billet sales made from blast furnace steel, just as we have with merchant slabs that are made from blast furnace steel. So that's something that is going to change the way traders work in the future and how mills operate around the world.
Michael, I like the point because, and we don't have to forget that electric furnace is still a very flexible and efficient way to produce steel. So it's not the end of electric furnace at all.
Sure. Any other comments? So I move on to the next question. What impact, if any, will EU sanctions have on Russia's billet and long steel exports? Kim, would you like to talk about this?
Well, I'm not, to be honest, I'm not sure in terms of specifically how the sanctions are affecting exports into Spain, into Europe. There was already a regulation, so I'm not sure if that's going to change, to be honest. Sorry, but I don't have the information. In terms of exports to other areas, well, I don't think it's going to affect. So I'm sorry, but I don't have the details to answer the question, sorry.
Okay. Any comments on this one? No. So we move on to the next question. This is for traders. Chinese exporters are offering very competitively priced billets to Turkish market and competing with Turkish mills in the finished steel export markets at the same time. Does it not sound like a contradiction?
Yeah, it is a contradiction. But if the Turkish mills or traders had a problem with it, they shouldn't buy Chinese. That's all. You know, it's if your mill is going to come and compete with you at the same time, you don't have to buy from that mill. So it's up to them.
Okay. Any comments? No? All right. Moving on to the next question. This one is for the Raw Material Suppliers Committee. Chinese exporters have entered the Turkish domestic market selling billets and wire rods. Even some Turkish steel producers have started to import billets from China due to price advantages of these offers compared to purchasing scrap and then producing billets themselves. Do you think such competitive offers will continue to impact global scrap markets? Mentioning this situation.
If this will continue, of course, but we have always we need to have in mind that this Chinese invasion, let's so, is not for sure that it's going to continue. This is due mainly to the slowdown of the domestic consumption. If next session of the Politburo, the Central Committee, they will decide to strengthen a new 5-year plan and so on, they will not. So we don't have to take this as a permanent. If you want, my opinion, more important is the new situation in the Arab Peninsula. This is a long-term trend, let's say so, not trend, but trend. But as far as the Chinese products will be exported to Turkey or to the other markets, where Turkey is exporting also, yes, it will be there will be pressure in scrap price because of the competition between scrap price, production from scrap or production from rolling billets. This is the real problem. But I'm not afraid that this will be a permanent situation.
Until the scrap prices come down to a point where they're balanced again.
I think we should change another chairman, not myself.
These things do continue. And when you see the change in the market, the traders, and now you mentioned the Turkish domestic market, these are, clever people. They just go find ways to balance it. So eventually market finds the right way to do it. So the prices in free markets, prices eventually find a way to balance each other. So eventually you will see the scrap prices come to the terms with the iron ore prices, and this will go away. Yes, sir. On the other side.
Hi, Yusuf. My question is to Mr. Don. We all know that United States is the country who has the biggest trade barriers, and they are protecting themselves very well against Chinese imports. Do you think Turkey and all these invaded countries, they could take the same precautions instead of talking about a free market, like they are talking about the United States? Thank you.
Of course they can. And it's one way to do it. I'm always for free trade. I believe what's going on in Turkey, just like I mentioned, if the Turks allow this billets come in and they export their regular markets anyway, eventually this will all balance. So I think free markets is the best solution for everyone. What's happening in the U.S. is it's a different case. I think it's more political than it's a reality. So I really don't think that the Turks should just stop it and just go with the flow.
Liberalism from the perspective of producers, now I'm talking not only for Turkish producers but also producers in Europe and other countries. Well, in certain periods of, obviously we understand that free trade is a way, but in certain periods of emergency, like we can be seeing in some markets or some countries or some areas at this point in time where the threat is to lose, I know, thousands of jobs and to lose just to your industry to being wiped up. I think in emergency cases you will see, and you're seeing a lot of that now. And I think it's understandable. I mean, obviously in long term and for long-term discussions we have to talk about free trade, but in emergency situations I think it's, in a sense, it's fair.
What I really meant was, when I say free trade is good. Now, we have to pay attention to fair trade. When we talk about fair trade, I don't think China is playing fair. Yesterday, in our traders' meeting, we just found out that even to Africa, the Chinese mills, through their traders, are selling rebar and wire rod, whatnot, with 180-day terms. I was wondering how they could do that. Well, it turns out that they have credit insurance. I said, well, that's great. Who's the insurance company? Who would give such insurance? Well, it turns out that it's the government, Chinese government insurance agency are giving this. So basically, it's a subsidy. So when we're talking about government intervention, we're really not talking about free trade. So I'm all fair, for the free trade as long as it's fair. So going back to your question, if the Chinese are invading your market with methods that is not fair, yes, you should take precautions. But as long as it's fair, everything equal, and it's open. But then it's hard to, in today's environment, come and say that, well, how are you going to make the Chinese play fair? That is, I'll leave that question to you all.
Just to comment on the insurance.
the Chinese government institution for insurance, Sinosure, is open for even European traders. So it's nothing exclusive for Chinese traders.
Trust me, I'll call on them.
Okay, thanks very much. But basically, we have been discussing the Chinese situation, and the next question is more or less on the same subject. Maybe I shouldn't even read the whole question here, but the last one is, can we expect China's dominance in the billet export markets to continue unimpeded well into the future? This is what you have already mentioned, Yanis. We do not know what's going to happen tomorrow in China, so that is very hard to say, I guess. Any comments?
The Ukraine situation in Ukraine will not continue.
Sure.
Just they start even, I think since yesterday, they themselves start producing and so on. Of course, we have always the financial problem, but the banks slowly, they will start again. So these factories are not going to disappear, they're not going to shut down. Of course, they're going to find a solution, is in Russia's interest also. So I don't think that Ukraine is producing a lot of good quality in comparison with
and they will try to compete.
know what you are buying. So, in my opinion,
And from yesterday, they all expect to be in the market beginning of next year, and they are ready to compete. So, I think, the Chinese builders will have their markets. The Ukrainian, when they're back, but hopefully we want them to be back very soon, because obviously the colleagues are suffering a lot. So we want them to be back as soon as possible. They will have their markets. You cannot say these guys will take all. I don't think it's going to be the case.
Okay. Any comments? No. So moving on to the next question, which is related to Traders Committee. And again, still on China. We had seen aggressive Chinese semi-finished and finished product offers having a significant impact on the global market price trends lately. Chinese exports reached almost 50 million tons during the first 7 months of the year, up 36.9% from last year. What's your expectation of Chinese exports for the next 2 quarters?
Well, that all depends on the GDP growth of China. If the growth of China slows down, yes, you will see this continue, and you will see that probably will continue with vengeance. Keep in mind, China produces close to 800 million tons, and even if they export 10%, that's 80 million tons. That's close to what U.S. produces, so it's a lot. But if the economy in China improves and GDP goes back to 9-10%, then you will see less pressure from China to the rest of the world. So really it has a lot to do with what's going on in China, and unfortunately the news is right now that the economy in China is slowing. So then right now, if there's no new measures given by the government, you will see that there will be more Chinese steel in the world markets.
Okay. This one is once again on free trade. Chinese steel exports have become a serious threat not only in Middle East and South America, but even in Turkish local market. Will there be more countries putting up trade barriers to keep out Chinese imports?
Yes. Yes, of course.
No doubt about that.
No doubt about it. Self-defense. Exactly. This is early self-defense, yeah.
So you're giving them a message.
Absolutely.
Any comments on this one from the floor? No. Everybody agrees that there will be more coming up, huh? Okay. Moving on to the next question. This is for the panel, by the way. More than half of the publicly listed Chinese steel producers have debt ratios of over 70%. Total debt of the Chinese steel industry is over $486 billion, with 43% of this amount being bank loans. Chinese banking industry has recently been warned about lending money to iron ore merchants and steel industry. Per National Steel Congress, there is an overcapacity of 180 to 240 million tons per year in China, if not more. Nobody knows the actual figure right now, I guess. Do you expect the Chinese government to save these producers from bankruptcy or leave them on their own?
Well, I think and maybe someone has been in China recently is a fact that recently the policy of government has changed in terms of starting to allow private mills to go bankrupt. And I think in the recent month, in the case of 2 or 3 mills, river mills just shutting down. A different point is what's going to happen with the government, with government-owned mills. Yeah. And it's true that in terms of for the health of the financial system, that obviously the Chinese are very worried that is maybe getting a little bit too messy. The bankruptcy of private companies is now released. I don't know if anyone can give more information on that.
When you look at China, people always say government, but there's 2 separate governments. The central government has different policies than the local governments. I can easily say that the central government is supporting only the mills that has higher technology and more efficient and actually environmentally safe as well. But when it comes to the local governments, that's a different story. Now you're talking about mills in their own territory and paying, putting their people in a labor at work. So the local governments are the ones that are supporting the smaller mills that doesn't go out of business. So it's a really contradicting policy. It's been going on. So if you look at the central government is really trying to take the inefficient mills out of business. I mean, I have seen mills that are really using their furnaces still with coal, literally shoveling coal and burning the furnaces. Now, those mills have to go out of business and creating obviously tremendous pollution. And I've seen those mills close. And government is subsidizing with finance and whatnot the newer mills with the newer technology, and that is fine. So you will see some trend where the efficient mills will unfortunately expand the capacity where the smaller mills are going out. The problem is these smaller independent mills, when you put them out of business, really are not taking much tons out of the market because the other mills are putting new capacity with new technology, competing heavily with you directly. So overall, yes, you will see the smaller mills go out, but then the bigger mills that has the good financing and the new technology will continue to supply to the market.
Thank you. Any other comments from the floor? Questions? Okay, next one is for the Raw Material Suppliers Committee once again. U.S. scrap suppliers are enjoying strong demand in the domestic market and recently booked several cargoes to a number of export markets like Kuwait, Saudi Arabia and Egypt, where they have apparently obtained better prices than the Turkish market. This has resulted in a relatively tight availability of scrap imports for Turkish market. Do you think this may be a long-term trend? You have already answered this, but
yes,
any
I
other
mentioned
questions?
that, yes, I believe, but in the same time, and this is the contradiction I mentioned also in my report, scrap demand is increasing domestically and renewable. But I think that we know the Turkish market, all the suppliers from Europe, from States, from Black Sea, we know we are working, there is a confidence, we are working open account and so on. So I think that when Turkey will try to find material, more or less difficult, but they will find. The problem is to have orders to sell their products. But of course, maybe there will be some moments that, okay, so as my friend is saying here, the market will find the ways and the solutions for this.
One thing I noticed, I just came from Turkey, and there's construction everywhere. The whole city of Istanbul is changing, and they're demolishing the old buildings that's all over 30 years old, and they're building newer ones. So I noticed that there's a lot of rebar that goes into these markets, which is great, but then there's a lot of scrap coming out from the demolishing. So I think you will see a whole lot of scrap coming in from those buildings that will supply to the newer, the rebar that really is probably putting some health into the market.
Certainly, the share of local scrap consumption is steadily increasing. No questions, no comments from the floor, so excuse me. Mic is there. Microphone is there.
Hi. Being from the United States, I had one theory. If the U.S. scrap producers can find higher price markets to sell their scrap, will that mean that the price of scrap in USA will be relatively stable? It won't drop that much, and which will mean a higher rebar transaction price in USA? What do you think?
But they don't. At the end of the day, it's not only one or two markets that you can sell. So it's a big market, and you have to look at the whole world. When you talk about scrap, you have to look at the whole world. So if they go to one market, make some margin, for a short time period, eventually it all balances out. You will see a pressure because of the iron. That's my opinion.
Thanks. So we move on to the next one. This is for the producers once again. Due to geopolitical problems, volumes of billets and other materials exported by CIS countries to the Turkish market and in the Middle East are decreasing. What will be the consequences of this situation in the long term?
In the long term, I think they will be back. So that's the long term. They're not going to disappear. The guys are working hard to be back as soon as possible. So in the long term, they will be back. In the meantime, what's going to happen is what we have been saying. I mean, there will be a substitution from China, from other sources, but in the long term, these guys, I think they deserve it, and they're going to be back again.
Sure. Temporary substitutes are in the market at the moment. Okay. This one is for the panel. How will the ISIS problem affect Turkish steel exports to Iraq and to the Middle East in the coming period? Can Turkish suppliers turn to alternative outlets? Which ones? You have already mentioned during your opening speech.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Probably if anyone from the room can help us in terms of Turkish producer to answer the question, to give us a little information.
Someone of the Turkish representatives? I guess.
I personally was very surprised that I really expected serious blockage in the trade to Iraq. So I asked to my colleagues with really some fear of hearing that there's really no business and it's going bad. But one of the mills that is a main export to Iraq told me that they just load the cargo and the trucks go. So apparently, when there's a will, there's a way. I was very surprised to hear that.
Okay. This one is directed to you. Do you think the European Central Bank's decision to engage in some form of quantitative easing offer any hope that Europe's economy and thus its steel demand may yet be sparked into life?
Listen, in Europe, I think that the economy is in a much better state than 1.5 years ago. Yesterday was mentioned in the conference. 1.5 years ago, European people were not sure what was happening tomorrow. We were not sure about if our euros we had in the bank will be worth something the next day. So no one was spending one euro, nothing. We were just saving as much as you could. That has changed a lot since the last year because basically the central bank, European Central Bank, has said, "Hey guys, sorry, you are safe." So that means that in Europe, the consumer confidence has grown a lot, and the consumers today, news from this morning, retail sales in Germany, I mean, the German people who are sitting in Berlin, they always complain about the economy. It's a fantastic economy, but they're always complaining. But today, the news is that retail sales in Germany went up last month 2.5%, where it was expected, I think, 1%. So that means that, and that's saying, we're saying Spain is in trouble, but in Spain the consumer spending is going up. So that means that the confidence in the economy is what the BCE has done with all the measures been increasing and strengthening the confidence in the economy, especially from the consumer, and that's good. Yeah? You see transactions in Spain, for instance, in the last first 6 months of this year, real estate transactions started to be positive after 5 years going down. Obviously, the price has gone down 50%. That has helped, but the transactions, real estate market is back. Yeah? So definitely, Europe is coming. I mean, obviously, with certain doubts, not as fast as we want. We all want. But Europe is not going back. Europe is coming, and the demand, definitely in the European Union, demand for steel will go up, definitely for sure.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? So I'll move on to the next one. This is once again on Europe, but from a different perspective. European entrepreneurs believe that non-EU steel producers' competitiveness also results from environmental dumping. The EU imposes strict pollution limits on steel producers, causing an increase in their production costs. At the same time, non-EU competitors can compete in the international markets with bigger profit margins. How do you feel about this situation? Do you agree with European producers when they say that duties should be applied to European scrap exports to those countries that pay less attention to environmental protection? The political one, I guess.
Yeah, this is... the answer to that last question is that that's not going to happen. The European Union is not going to introduce a tax. I mean, that's obvious. European Union is always very, in that sense, we producers will always complain that the European politicians, they believe so much in the free market and being politically right all the time. Obviously, we complain, but that's the way it is. That's the culture in our society, so that's not going to happen. Listen, the European producers, obviously, these extra costs, but it's not big. We are working in many, I think yesterday in the presentations was said that when you want to be competitive, you don't have to work in just one point, because you've got 1,000 points to work in, and that's what we're doing. I mean, in Europe, European producers, we've been working a huge job in terms of cost cutting in all aspects. Logistics is something that is also, we need to work very hard in our European structure in terms of ports and everything to make it more competitive. Companies, energy. There are so many areas where we are working because we understand we have to be competitive. And okay, this is one aspect where we believe that we will never, we complain, but we think that we're not going to get any success. So the message is we definitely were working in other aspects in order to be competitive. And obviously, one factor that is a little bit changing the game these days is the euro-US dollar exchange rate. That is also going to give Europe a bit more for bring the European producers and the European exporters in general more competitive in the world.
Thanks. Only for scrap exporters from Europe.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Please, Jens.
Well, I'm glad that you guys are continuing to pay attention to the environment and not saving costs from there, because it's a social responsibility of the mills to think about their environment and actually the world and in a whole. So you're going to have to do the right thing, and hopefully the rest of the world will take you as an example and continue to do the same. This can't be really done by forcing. This can't be done with this footprint, carbon footprint exchange. This really comes with education and responsibility, and I'm glad that you're taking that.
And this is the only way. We have to go ahead.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, thanks. Next one is for the traders. What is the current liquidity situation in the steel trade in general? At the previous Europass meeting held in Spain, in Barcelona, it was asserted that credit restrictions were limiting the pace of the steel trade and that finance providers consider the steel business to be risky. Has there been any change in this situation? Are liquidity issues more strongly in some regions than in others?
Of course, yes. There's a huge change. If you look at the U.S. market, I think that we don't have any more credit issue. And the economy is, going strong, and even with 2-3% growth rate, the credit issue becomes a non-issue. Selling to the rest of the world, though, it's a different story. Like I just mentioned earlier, to sell to the African market, the European traders or American traders, for us to give 180-day terms into those markets, or Middle East, or even South America, it's tough. I mean, it's hard to get your credit insurance companies to go that far. But depending on the markets, I think U.S. is no problem, and the other countries probably still exist.
Thank you. Any other comments? Moving on to the next question. How important is the U.S. economy to the steel industry in general, particularly in these circumstances?
Well, listen, the U.S. economy, I think, is maybe changed. You got the figure, but it's like 30% of the world GDP. James, you got the figure? U.S. economy is 30% of the world GDP or something like that, maybe 25%.
If you count derivatives, it would be multiples of that.
Oh yeah, no, but it's a big chunk of the. So if U.S. economy, we all, it's good that all in general economies of the world, and I think this is the case. We cannot complain on the state of economy, general economy in the world today. It's not looking bad, but good news is that the U.S. economy is pushing and is accelerating, because that's going to help not only the steel industry but a lot of industries in the world. Yeah, that's very good news for us, and it's a change because for a few years we have been without that. So it's a change. It's a real good change there.
Thankfully, yeah. The world economy is depending on each other. So you can't really take the U.S. economy out and say that, well, that's doing fine everywhere else in the world is going to be fine. But I can just say the opposite. If the U.S. economy suffers, like we have seen in 2008, the world economy will suffer, and obviously that will affect the steel prices as well. It will affect the steel price, it will affect the oil price. Right there.
Thank you. More comments from the floor? Moving on to the next question. This is probably the concluding all the discussions, I guess. At this time of steel oversupply, what would be your recommendation to steel producers?
Increase production.
Just go on
holiday for a year or so.
My recommendation obviously is, I think the good thing these days is that at least in majority of countries, obviously China's different fish, but is that the steel mills these days, they all focus on making profit. Yeah? So it's not producing tons for producing tons, supplying for supplying. We are focused, and we all study our P&L accounts. We all study our cost structure. We all see. These days at Sasa, I got the information of the profitability of every customer. And if one customer is not profitable, I'm challenged. I mean, my owner of Sasa is a family-owned business, and the guy is there, and he comes to me and says, "Hey, what is happening with Mr. X? What are you selling to him if we are not making money?" Okay? So that's the level of professionality that, thanks God, is in the industry these days. So, the recommendation is, it's what is happening. I mean, every mill is just trying to make profit. Is trying to be efficient. Is trying to make the most of the resources they've got. Is trying to cut costs. Is trying to adjust production to the environment. Is trying to understanding what markets it can reach with decent levels of profitability, what customers are interesting for them. So, and that's what it needs to be. I mean, and this is the level of professionality there is in the industry these days, and I think that's good news.
Okay. Well, you really have to cut production like you have been doing. You know, it really doesn't make sense to produce the tons that you can't sell or reduce your prices to sell. I think that in the old days, the mills are gauged with how many million tons that they produce. Today, to really survive, it's how much profit you make to survive in this environment. So it does not make sense to just keep on producing, thinking that you're going to sell, because that eventually is going to reduce your margins and probably put you into negative. In protected environments, like the United States, somewhat Europe or India, it's very easy to cut the production and increase the prices. Because when you put barriers to the rest of the world, then you have your local market that you basically control. So if you cut down the production, you can easily increase your prices.
Thank you. Any other comments from the floor or any other questions? Okay, thanks a lot for sharing your comments and thoughts with us. This concludes the questions that we're going to be discussing during this session. I also would like to thank you all for your participation. And I also would like to extend my sincere thanks and appreciation to all the distinguished speakers that have shared their experience and opinions with us during the course of these 2 days. I also would like to thank our sponsors, our platinum sponsor, Qatar Steel, gold sponsors, Liberty Commodities, Çolakoğlu Metallurgy, and bronze sponsors, CNF International and Belgian Scrap Terminals, for their unstinting support to this event. The next ERPAS meeting will take place in Paris from 22nd to 24th of March 2015. So once again, thank you all for your participation and hope to see you in 6 months' time.